Full screen. Hello, welcome to Mash.ie through the Masher. Hello, that was cut very quickly. Hello, everyone. I hope you are all really, really well this lovely evening. It's not raining here in Carlow anyway, so we're happy about that. Thanks so much for tuning in, and thanks to everyone for sending in questions. We are going to have a very lively, hopefully, debate, Claire, so I hope you're wide awake. This is Top Teaching Resources. Claire Romito, you may not have seen the face. She's one of our Mash.ie sellers, one of our brilliant sellers actually, and yeah, she always gets top reviews and top comments, and that's why her name was chosen very well, Claire, Top Teaching Resources. Yeah, so tonight we're going to be discussing reopening schools. We're going to be having a look, and we're going to be chatting about this document, if you can see it there, the returning to school. Now, I know on Monday, the government released their brand new website, is it gov.ie back to school? And they also released, I think, like probably 1,000 different documents and resources for teachers to and principals to look through on their time, you know. So we're just going to look at one document because we think it's probably, Claire, the most relevant and useful to teachers, isn't it, going back to school in September?
Yeah, I mean, I'd agree with you, Roz. There was an awful lot of information published on Monday, you know. It was a bit overwhelming to see it all. And I think really for teachers, probably the most relevant one and thing most teachers want to know about is what am I going to be teaching? How are things going to look? So definitely a good idea to focus on one now rather than trying to cover them all.
Yeah, exactly. We won't be too ambitious. So what we're going to do is the format is we're just going to have a chat. And I guess myself and Claire, I teach with Claire as well. I just thought I'd put that out. I've been teaching with Claire working with Claire for the last 7, 8 years, coming into the 8th year, can you believe it? So I know Claire pretty well too. So we've been chatting about, I guess, what we want this discussion to be. It could very easily turn into a frustrating, stressful, ranting, giving out, and we might do that. No, we won't. We're going to stop ourselves. So stop each other doing that. And we're going to try, you know, we are going to focus on, I guess, we want to support teachers, new experienced teachers. We want to actually hopefully come out and make sure this is as useful and relevant to teachers as possible in the classroom. So on a practical level, we're going to pick apart. We have actually, Claire's been reading and obsessing over this document a lot. And she wrote a really good article about it on Monday. And what I really liked about that article, Claire, was it was just really succinct and had all the main stuff, because there is a lot of wishy-washy stuff we already know as teachers in this document, but then there is stuff in it too about the actual changes. So do you want to talk about the article and maybe that kind of type of thing?
Yeah, absolutely. I guess when I started reading all the documents, like it was very overwhelming. There's a huge amount of information, but really, once you pick out kind of the nuggets that are in there of the relevant information, things you need to know, you know, it's actually not too bad, but it's just distilling it down into that is the main thing. And I think the thing that most teachers want to know about. So I guess on Monday and on Tuesday morning as well, I read through all of the documentation, and then I just literally picked out the main points, the things that I thought were most relevant that people would need to know. So I don't know, maybe Simon could share a link to it if people wanted to check that out, but we can certainly have a chat about it here as well.
Yeah, that's really good. Yeah, that sounds cool. And just you mentioned Simon there. I didn't even introduce Simon. You're not going to see his face tonight, but he is the techie support over there. He's doing all this fancy stuff that comes up there in the orange mash.ie/blog. And on that blog, we have, including your article, Claire, we have lots of good articles written by all the teacher sellers that we have. And again, really practical, useful from teachers actually in classrooms. So it's not just people in the government talking about what they think teaching is like. So have a look at those. And we're always looking for teachers to write articles for us. Please send them in to us at hello@mash.ie. Now, speaking about you guys watching, if you have questions or comments or just want to say hello to me and Claire and say nice complimentary things, we're very happy to receive them in the comment section in the Facebook Live and the YouTube Live. So send them on, and then Simon will do his magic tech wizardry. I don't ask how he does that, he just does it. And then the questions will magically appear on the screen, which is kind of cool and nifty. Okay, so we're going to get going on one of our first questions. I think I've covered everything there. I've checked my notes. Yeah, okay, so we're going to get going on one of the questions. And I suppose I might put it to you and then put it to myself, and then we can have a little discussion. So we don't want this to turn into a serious type of interview. I'm not going to marking you, giving you points, Claire. It's like a two-way conversation. So the first one, what did you get up to during lockdown?
So for me, and I think half the teachers in the country, it was like a crash course in ICT. I wasn't a Luddite. I was fairly okay with computers and all of that, but it was really a very steep learning curve trying to get to grips with screencasting and making videos and editing videos. So, I mean, I was looking at it in a positive way, yes, it wasn't ideal. Nobody wanted to be doing remote teaching, but it was like a silver lining in the cloud that it was a great opportunity to kind of learn about how to do all of that kind of stuff. And I can definitely say that, it's skills that are going to stand to me in that. So I tried to do an awful lot of CPD as well. There was some great CPD by the education centres. I did a lot of that. And then I guess personally, I just felt I had a lot more time than I've had in probably 10 years. And I mean, it's not that we weren't doing, teaching or whatever. It's just we were going nowhere else. So I found I had a lot of time that I was exercising every day. And at the beginning, it was a really stressful time. I was quite anxious, as I know most people were. So I made a really big effort to kind of look after myself, for my mental health and that. So I did a lot of exercise, a lot of cooking from scratch, that kind of thing. So I guess going back to school now, it's something I'm definitely going to make an effort to kind of keep going with, because it's going to be a tough year if you don't look after yourself first, I guess.
I dread that kind of, it's like the rat race. I dread that when you finish teaching, you do your planning, you have your meeting, and then you're racing off, racing home, dinner, go. It's that kind of, I just loved that about lockdown, that it was just about me and my house and the home and the family. And that's obviously my teaching job, but then the teaching job as well, Claire, I felt it was, you were constantly on and thinking about it. And even when I switched off the last day, when I had my last Zoom meeting to 11:30, it took me a few days to say, stop checking Class Dojo, stop checking. I kept thinking of the kids in my class. And so it was definitely harder to switch off when you were a remote teacher. And you felt wrecked in a different kind of in a different way.
Yeah, it was completely different. The whole experience, it was a different job. It wasn't the job of teaching as we've known it. It was a completely different job.
No. And there was no soul. I say that to anyone. There was no soul to teaching.
No.
So it's just soulless. And you tried your best to interact on screen, but it's with little kids, it's just, it's just not the same. So I did definitely the same things as you, and I cooked more and I baked more. And we have a 5-year-old, so I was teaching him. I mean, so I would always say it's much more fun teaching other people's kids. Definitely. You have this dream of homeschooling, and it's like, no, that dream is gone forever.
Yeah, I think everyone's dream of homeschooling.
Well, no, that's all right. We'll send you off to school. Yes, okay. So I think that we might be ready for our second question. What have we got? Oh, okay. So the guidelines, Claire. Again, we'll start really positive. So what are the positive aspects for teachers?
I guess they're quite detailed, it's overwhelming that they're so detailed, but also there is a lot of useful information in there. And the templates are there for you. You're getting a template for your policy, for contact tracing, cleaning checklists, that kind of thing. So at least that kind of administrative burden isn't going to be on teachers and schools to have to do all of that. So that's positive. And I guess even the guidelines that it's giving you particular curricular areas to focus on, that we're not feeling like that we need to go in like superheroes and try and catch up on last year's work, plus do all of the subjects of the curriculum. It's kind of telling you it's okay not to cover everything straight away. You can take September to settle in and that. So, that is quite reassuring for teachers. As well, the fact that there was funding, I think a lot of people were surprised that there was much more funding that involved than people would have expected. And probably finally, there's certain aspects of primary school that are going to be funded adequately that have never been funded adequately before, like cleaning, so there's some positives.
I know. I'm just really happy that we might even have extra cleaner, which is
I
great.
know. Yeah. Yeah.
I'm really excited about that. But yeah. If anyone else, again, the comments, if you're watching in, if you have any questions at all about the guidelines, do send them in. I suppose, yeah, it was positive that the whole thing is, I don't know what the saying was, NEPS was slow down to catch up. Was that what it was? Yeah.
That was it. Yeah.
And I'm the kind of person that would be like, let's go and do it all. Let's revise everything. And now it's like, no, it's okay. Actually, just really spend September just with, I would say, a lot of activities based around SPHE, well-being, little bit of revision. Just take it really slowly for yourself as well as the children. You know,
Yeah.
you don't need to be stressing everyone out with an overload. So yeah, that was the positive aspect of those guidelines, and the checklists were great for the other documents. I would have liked checklists in that actually for teachers. I think it would have been handy at the end. Maybe that's something you could work on, Claire, in your free time. Sheets. So if you want to ask a question out there, just pop it into the comments box, and if you put the question in, Simon will see it and he'll add the question then. So just type it up if you want to say hello, if you want to add any comments, if you want to motivate us and cheer us on. I know we've got a number of people watching us, which is great. Come here, we're going to go on to the second one, which I presume is related to challenges, is it? Yeah. Okay, so this is a hard one. Yeah, Claire, what challenges do you see? Will they work on the ground? If we were looking at those guidelines and said, okay, we're going to fully implement them, what challenges did you see? If you were a class teacher, I know you're not going to be in the class this year, but if you were a class teacher, what would you be kind of going, what challenges do I have?
I guess, like, for me, the biggest thing that stood out was, like, these challenges are going to all stem from the underinvestment that we've had in education for decades. Like, we have such big class sizes that you can't actually effectively implement social distancing. You know, it has to be that the children return to school fully and there isn't proper social distancing. So, you know, that's stemming from having huge class sizes. Then the fact that, you know, a lot of school buildings are very old, they're not properly equipped, and I know there is going to be, you know, a minor works grant that's much higher than previously, but it's a limited time really. The guidelines came out very late in the day, so it's quite a limited time for schools to be able to get everything ready in time. And again, you know, it's all coming back to the fact that we've neglected education so much. Like, if you think about SNAs, everyone knows how hard it is to get an SNA for a child. It's almost impossible. When you do get an SNA, it is never enough time. An SNA is always shared between, you know, 2, 3, 4, 5 children. And then we have a situation where we're being told in the guidelines that really adults shouldn't be, you know, going into different class bubbles, you know, and kind of breaking the integrity of that class bubble. But then you have a situation where set teachers and SNAs are going to have to be shared. So, you know, those are going to be very tricky aspects to try and manage.
I think there'll be challenges for teachers, challenges for principals, there'll be challenges for parents. I know when I was reading the guidelines, one thing that struck me was, I think it was under the role of the teacher, was that your job is to manage parents' expectations. And that's going to be very difficult for the year because you're not going to really see parents the way you used to see them. They're not going to, you know, the kids aren't going to be telling them that much. They're going to want to know, how is their educational attainment now? Has it suffered? Are you just revising? Are you just doing well-being stuff? You know, are you not getting on with the maths and the Irish? So there's challenges for teachers definitely in managing the expectations of parents. There's challenges in, I suppose, the planning aspect has to change. I think the teacher's role is, I think we have become teachers that are very adept at using active learning methodology.
Absolutely.
You know, I have a space in my class that I made for circle time every single day, 2, 3 times a day. We would sit down together and discuss. That's gone now. So I know the guidelines say, oh, let's not go back. You know, let's not go back to an old chalk and talk style. It's very easy to say that. But we're not, how else do we, you know, and I know we will. Teachers are brilliant, they're flexible, we will do this, but it's not going to happen straight away. So there's going to be kind of a period of time where teachers adapt to this new normal, like every other sector in the whole world is adapting. And it's that unknown for me that kind of makes me go, it makes you think, I'm starting again. I'm teaching 20 years, I'm actually starting again, and I have to relearn everything. It's exciting, but it is challenging, I think, Claire, isn't
Yeah,
it?
I agree with you 100%. Like it says, parts of the guidelines are saying, well, really, different pods shouldn't be sharing learning materials and resources and things like that. And it's kind of suggesting that you're not using as many concrete materials. But then on the other hand, it's suggesting, well, you can't go back to didactic teaching. You have to still do, discovery learning and guided learning. Then you're like, well, how do I do that without any toys or resources or anything?
Yeah.
So it's going to be ingenuity on the part of teachers. But that's something teachers have been doing for
Yeah.
years,
Yeah.
based on the fact that we never had enough funding and resources.
And you know what's really funny, Claire? And I've been thinking, I kept waking up last night going, don't forget to say this. This is really funny. Someone pointed this out on Twitter. It's in one of the guidelines. It's not the returning to school. It's talking about cleaning products. And, it's like a teacher must make sure their work area is cleaned every day. A teacher must be provided with sufficient cleaning items from management. And then it says, did you see this? On no accounts can a teacher remove those items from the school.
Oh,
I was
because
like,
we're going to take them.
the Department for Education is saying we're going to steal stuff, but more like someone else said on Twitter, more like we bring in stuff from
I
home.
know,
I spray
I
my own
know,
spray and wipes. This
I
is ridiculous.
know, I know.
Like,
Like, there's no other profession where people bring to steal things from home and bring them into work.
now we're going to get cleaning sprays, Claire and
Oh
Jacobs,
my God.
maybe. Like it's just maybe hand sanitizer. Who knows? Like we're being really spoiled. Yeah, so all of that is mad.
Hot water.
But the other challenges, but then I guess the curriculum you talked about just briefly there before we finish this, you were saying like it's kind of like what's the expression? The hens have come home to roost, or the chickens have come home to
Yeah,
roost with the
yeah,
Department of Education.
yeah,
Classes are too big, lack of staff, lack of SNAs, basically neglecting special
yeah,
education needs, I would think.
yeah,
And now this is all impacting on the class, and you can't. That's the one thing that still is there, and it's still papering over. Curriculum overload, that's what I was going to say. That has been,
yeah, yeah,
again, overwhelming, really stressful for any teacher, no matter what point of your career you're in. And now at least we've been told in the guidelines, it's okay, relax, pull back a bit,
yes, yeah.
because a lot of our time now will be spent washing hands, hand
Mm-hmm.
sanitizing, teaching children
Yeah.
about COVID.
Yeah, I
So
would agree with that as well. Like, I mean, that is a full-time job in and of itself. Like having a class of 30 children and you're one adult. Like some days I felt that I was just doing crowd control, and I was doing well just to be doing a bit of teaching in the core subjects.
yeah,
So on top of that, we now have trying to manage small children and social distancing, keeping them, away from each other, hand hygiene, respiratory hygiene, trying to manage all that on top of the teaching. Like really, there's going to be a lot less teaching and learning than there has been previously. So it has to be a case of, look, we prioritize SPHE, PE,
for some
math,
reason he got in there. Why that
math and literacy, and then it'll be just integrate into your lesson, integrate your arts education and your SESE into your other lessons, and
yeah.
that's going to be how it is.
Yeah, apparently we have 6 questions waiting. So, and a teacher's praising our positivity. Some teacher, thank you very much. We're trying. I don't know if we're being overly positive now. We're trying. You have to be. I think you have to be. Teachers have to be, because we're going to have to do this. So we may as well. So what's our first question then? Go on. From Jonah Rahalig, what provisions do you think will be in place for kids who cannot return to school due to underlying conditions? Claire, did you read anything on that? Or do you
I
know?
did, yeah, I did. So it's going to be pretty much a continuation of the remote learning that had been going on during the lockdown. They say that somebody in the school is going to have to provide for that child's education. It doesn't specify who. I presume they mean the set teacher is going to be the one setting out the work for that child. But again, like it's quite vague. There's no kind of provision for providing that child with materials, or a tablet or whatever they need to be able to access the learning material. So it does seem to be very much left up to individual schools, and then there's no kind of consistency saying, well, you will do videos or you will send work on a Sunday evening. Like it's just very much up to schools what it is, and it's a continuation of what it was before, unfortunately.
Yeah, I think so. Thanks, Claire. And thanks to Joan for sending in that question. Yeah. So do we have any other questions? Oh, DOT. I know DOT. I like that name. Question. What are your thoughts on having to cover library books in plastic? I don't want to pack all our books away, but I don't see myself having the time to do it. What are your thoughts? I don't know. What the thoughts are, I don't want to do that. I'm not going to do it. They're my thoughts straight away. What are your thoughts, Claire?
Gosh, I don't know. It's a really tricky one because the guidelines are kind of saying not to have shared resources. But then what do? You can't not give the children readers. How are you meant to teach them how to read without readers? It's a really, really tricky one. I don't know. Was that something you were telling me about, Roz, earlier about
Yeah,
books?
I think it was where I was saying to you there was a number of things conflicting. So the return to school in the language section says make sure you give them lots of books, a print-rich environment, plenty to read, great, and so on. In the other one, then, in the other document, which was I think it was the response to COVID document. I'm not sure the exact title. It was saying that all books and all library books, there is a section on library, should be put into plastic wipeable covers and sprayed down. And
Oh, God.
I think the staff that are going to be hired for that, that circle is out tomorrow. No,
Okay.
no, Claire, it's not. So
Oh,
who's going to do that? I don't know. Maybe parents, you see, book lists would have gone out already. Parents may have the sense or may think of putting those plastic coverings on. But then I'm not really sure about the huge evidence there is about COVID
hmm.
to plastic and surfaces. I know we'll have to be careful with it, but I'm not. Yeah, it's kind of, I don't know.
It
I mean,
might be a case of, if you do want your children to have library books and that you put, say, like a box with a selection of books on each of the tables, and let them choose from that, and then whatever the guidelines is in terms of, before something is safe to be used by another group, you put those things aside for however much time before you're allowed to use them with another group. So,
yeah,
but again, it's coming up with ideas. It's teachers
yeah.
trying to problem
And
solve.
it's going to take time. It's these very small, finicky things like that. Exactly, Dee. So I know our local library, when you give a book back, it's 72 hours they have to be. The books have to go into self-isolation. It's so upsetting. They can't interact. So maybe we'll have to have a little special room for the books to go into self-isolation for 3 days, and somebody can have a post to check on that. Anyway, Dee, thanks a million for that question. I'm not sure if we answered it, but Sinead McGregor Holmes, do you think it will be possible to do ASTRA? I think it will be possible to do it, but again, there's going to be tweaking. I know they talked, there's an incessant mention of
There
play
is, yeah.
documents, which is great, which has to happen. And I know the younger children don't necessarily have to social distance or go into
Mhm.
pods, is that correct? Or is that what you
No,
got?
you're correct on that, Roz. Yeah, the document does have a specific section on infants, and it does talk about how play is really important, in terms of their development, but also resilience and promoting well-being. So, I mean, if I were going into infants, yes, I would be doing Ashter, but it would probably look very different to what Astra has looked like before. Like you can't share toys between the pods. Now, they are saying that there isn't social distancing in infants. I don't think a lot of schools are going to be happy with that. I think that a lot of schools will continue to do the pods in
I
infants,
think so.
even if it's not really something that they're saying is mandatory. But it's a really tricky one. There's a weekly thing about washing the toys every week. I mean, it doesn't say you can't use toys. It just says washing them every week. And for things like Play-Doh, it can't be shared. Like a child has to have their own pot of Play-Doh or Morla or whatever. So it'll look different, I guess.
I think there's a lot of organisation there as well with infant teachers, and just I'm so glad I'm not an infant teacher this year. Good luck. Cynthia Buckley, this is something I'm thinking about. How will we manage supervision of breaks? Do you have any thoughts on that at all, Claire, or what are your ideas, I guess?
Yeah, look, I mean, it's going to be split breaks. There's no other way about it, really, for the majority of schools. I know some schools are looking at having staggered arrival times and dispersal times, and they are looking at using Croke Park hours to be able to manage that. That all the staff are coming in a little bit earlier in the morning to do supervision, but that's been taken from Croke Park hours. And I would imagine the whole break thing, like it depends on the size of the school and the kind of the grounds that you're on and your yard size and that. But I think it's going to be for most schools a case of split breaks, and an awful lot of yard duty,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah, it will, I think. Yeah, I think it is. I think that's the only option, really. And
Mm,
then what happens? It depends on the school.
yeah,
because we're in a pretty big school, it could look very
yeah,
different.
yeah,
But I think staff are also going to have to get used to hanging out in their little bubbles as well. I
yeah,
would think.
yeah.
So I'm hoping I'm going to pick my own the staff I'd like to be within my bubble. You might get into that bubble. You'd be very lucky. But then what if you had a fallout with a
I
staff
know,
member in
I
the bubble?
know,
Would you be able to
I
go to the
know.
principal and say, "Listen, I'm just not. I thought I got on with Claire, but we actually have nothing in common." Anyway, so yeah, that's the break question. Any ideas? Or Claire will have loads of ideas. So Sinead Mills has a question on SET. So Claire is the SET coordinator in our school for many, many years. She's worked in SET for years. I'd say what she doesn't know about this, I'd say she has lots of ideas. Do you, Claire? I hope.
I have lots of concerns,
Yeah,
unfortunately.
yeah,
Like I do have a big worry that set teachers are going to be doing a lot of subbing in classes and supervision. You know, we've had a massive subbing crisis for the last few years now, and I know that they are trying to put together panels for different locations, but like in our school alone, we could do with just two full-time subs, you know, and given the absenteeism, I mean, if people can't come in now with just a slight cold, you know, absenteeism is going to be huge. So I do fear that set teachers are going to be pulled to cover classes an awful lot, which is really unfortunate for the children who are most vulnerable, who are the children with special needs, who need the set teachers. So that is my fear. I think that in larger schools, like our school, where you have a very big set team, it'll probably be a case of one set teacher to a class, you know, so that if the class teacher is out, you have the set teacher that knows that class and is working with them,
yeah,
covering for the day. But also a case if you're limiting the set teacher working with
yeah.
multiple different classes. I'm not convinced that set teachers are going to be able to withdraw children. I think the set rooms are too well in our school anyway. They're too small to be able to do it with social distancing, and then to have children like usually we would take children from different classes. You're
Yeah,
not going to be able to do that
yeah,
now.
yeah,
So I think support is probably going to be moving into classes
yeah.
really.
And I
Um,
suppose that would make sense, Claire, with all of this hand washing and hygiene
yeah,
and rules and the
yeah,
management of the different, pods within the class. It would make sense. And again, that's great for schools that do have that. But then
yes,
there are some
yeah.
schools that do not have that, and that is really unfair. And I just don't know if there's any special provision for those schools to do anything to get more SET. Probably not at this
No, there
stage.
doesn't seem to be. No, there's no provision for extra SNAs, no provision for extra set teachers. So I mean, it is rather unfortunate. Like I would think that you do need two adults in each class to be able to manage all of the respiratory hygiene, hand hygiene, cleaning, you know, just even reminding children when they come out of the toilet, have you washed your hands, you know, that kind of thing.
Yeah,
Like you're going to need two adults for that. So in that scenario, you know, you don't have your proper, you know, set teacher teaching the children who need it most. You
yeah.
know, it is quite a missed opportunity. It's very unfortunate as well.
I
But
think it's the SET myself, and again, I meant to put in a disclaimer at the beginning of this program that we're not necessarily talking about our own school or our own class or what we think our school is going to be like, but in general, I think the SET role will change the most. I think this year, but I could be wrong. I could be wrong.
yeah,
That's what I'm predicting because I can't see how it couldn't.
yeah,
If I was an SET, I wouldn't don't know how comfortable I'd be in a room with three or four different children from three or four different classes in a small room cooped in together. I'm not sure how I'd feel about that. So I guess you have to think of that as well with staff and what they're kind of, comfortable with too. Yeah. So unfortunately, we don't really have any real answers on that, just speculation and ideas and things that we think are going to happen. So thank you, Sinead, for that question. Siobhan Mahoney, have we discussed space? We actually haven't got onto the space thing
no,
yet, Siobhan. Thank you. We're just rambling here. Thanks for moving us on. She's like, come on, just talk about the space thing. What if we kind of put 1 meter between senior pupils? Ah,
So it comes back to these being guidelines and not being mandatory. Unfortunately, the only way to have gotten schools back was to kind of disregard the guidelines that are in place in the public, wider public more generally. So if you can't fit them in, then with the proper distancing, it's kind of as much as possible.
Yeah.
Now, I did see a video today from one school that obviously they were in a position to do this. They have split a class, to try and take some children out because the classroom was very small. I think it's going to come down to schools at a local level and individual level to try and see what they can do with it. But I mean, there are so many classrooms out there that are not going to be able to. When you've 32 kids in a small, old building, you can't fit in a metre distance. And I mean, not only is it meant to be a metre distance between pods, the children individually within the pod are actually meant to have a metre between them as well. So we need to have huge desks with the children sitting at them.
Yeah. And it's
So,
all where possible.
yeah, it is, yeah.
And you're trying your absolute best. And I suppose the MPEG guidance and just everything I hear from the WHO is saying that if they can keep it low in the community,
Yes.
it's not just about the schools. If they can keep it low in the community and everyone's behaving and wear masks in public places, keeping social distancing, if the general public are doing that, and they stop people coming into Ireland with COVID, then hopefully schools are not going to be affected as much. But again, I think it is just a case of let's hope.
Hope. It is. Yeah.
And we're not
That's
going
a
to know
great
how it
point.
runs, are we?
Say that again, Roz.
Well, carry on what we were saying, Claire. You were saying it's a
No,
great
I'm
point.
saying that that's a great point. I mean, it'll be down to like schools and teachers and everyone who works in school. You'll need to be watching very carefully what is going on in your community, what's happening in the news, because that is going to be a very good indicator of whether or not COVID is likely to appear in the school, whether or not the school is likely to close. So that is a very good point.
Yeah, because I follow, like, I'm in Carla, there's been no new cases in Carla for quite some time. So it does make me feel more comfortable when I'm out. I do wear my mask, obviously, and I keep back from people, but it does make you feel that little bit more comfortable that it's not. Whereas originally where I'm from in Mayo, they've got a number of cases in the last while. So it's like, I'm not going home to Mayo for a while, Balmullet. So you kind of keep an eye on things like that, I guess, as well. So I'm not sure if that answered the question, but that's all we have in it, I guess. Kira Murphy, I'd love to know how we're supposed to do PE in COVID times. Children are back to extracurricular activities, but the guidelines for those are much stricter than the school guidelines. Now, there was one good thing about that document. Thank you, Kira. Particularly with PE, they were quite specific kind of restrictions on that, which was useful. They talked about children more or less are going to have to practice skills either by themselves or in very small bubbles. I know, so they'll be playing with the ball, bouncing by themselves, but they're not even allowed the ball. They have to have an imaginary ball. Woo! And it says equipment kept to a minimum. So it's like you could do loads of athletics. So basically, I have been thinking, and I guess it's going to be flexible. We are lucky enough in our school. We have a really nice grounds. I would say outdoors has to be timetabled and that we are able to take a walk. We're going to be doing a lot of outdoor activities, a lot of orienteering. You actually could do gymnastics, but then you'd have to use mats and you just spray them down after. Dance, you could actually do dance quite well. All it is music and put them outside. So you're going to have to focus on certain strands. Swimming, can't see that happening.
No.
With transport. No. What do you think, Claire? There'll be certain aspects of PE that are covered.
I think it was a surprise to a lot of people that PE featured so prominently as one of the priorities. Yes, it is very, very important, but for it to be kind of up there with, maths and English and that, they're like, they had it SPG, PE, then literacy, so it is something that it is very much going to be a focus that is something for September to start straight away with. But then on the other hand, they're saying very limited equipment, not doing, well, they said you could do activities with the children in their pods, that they could be, playing the games together in their pod or individually. I guess
you could have
outdoor adventure.
A certain amount of nets of balls. It's all money. And I'm presuming you can use the minor works grant or the COVID grant to buy. So if you had a set of balls for a class and it had a number on them, permanent marker. So this pod number 1 is going to be used just this ball.
Yeah.
So that's their ball. And then when they finish, if they're older, they can spray it down and they keep it in the classroom. So you might get even a set of balls would be great, or
Yeah.
basketball or football or softballs, and that they're kept with that pod. I think that'd be kind of a practical way
Yeah.
around it. And again, we're trying not to do too much. We're not going to be doing the full curriculum.
Yeah.
We need to get them outdoor for a little bit of break, a little bit of running, a little bit of walking, I would say, for the month of September. And I think the emphasis is the way PE was such a priority is because it's so good for mental health.
Yeah.
And also, if they're not inside, they're less likely to catch COVID. If they're
Yeah.
outside, fresh air, it's going to be better. So I guess I'm going to be, I would be timetabling in outdoor breaks a couple of times a day, going out, having a walk around. You could actually do how many steps? You could do 6,000 steps with them. And have little challenges like that. And I think they mentioned active flag, and I know we have that in our school, but a lot of the active flag activities don't require a lot of equipment. So it's rethinking the way we look at PE and sport, isn't it? Again,
Yeah, exactly. I mean, it's all coming back to, teachers doing what they've always done, which is coming up with new and innovative ways of doing things,
for free.
for free.
It's such a value for money. Siobhan, thank you for that question. Good question. Ursula Ryan. Okay, how do you think? Okay, Claire, it's a question for you. I'm going to delegate this right across to you. How do you think a shared SET between 4 schools in a job share scenario? So
Oh my
Ursula's
gosh.
making this really difficult for you. She's not letting you off. With both teachers working Monday and Tuesday, Thursday and Friday, and shared every second Wednesday.
Okay. Wow.
Take your time. Have a glass of drink. Have some water for you. Get to this one.
Oh my gosh, that is a really tricky one. And again, that's coming back to, individual schools have such different circumstances. I mean, we're talking about in our school where we're saying, oh yeah, we'll have one set teacher with each class, but then you have a situation like that is completely different. I think that's probably a situation that will have to kind of come down to the management talking with, of the two different schools, talking with the set teachers, trying to come up with a plan that will work. Because again, you have the guidelines about the class bubbles, and you're not meant to be bursting the bubbles by having different adults coming in and out. So that is a very tricky one. I'm not really sure, other than to say that I think that the school would need to sit down kind of at a management level and try and work something out with that. What about you, Raz? Do you have any
I
thoughts?
think so, yeah. You'd have to have agreement from both schools. Yeah, it's a tricky one because that probably would have been agreed before the whole lockdown. I'm not sure whether if that situation can be actually changed, if they can
Yeah.
do chicken. Maybe the department could actually help with something specific like that, to be honest with you.
And there was a provision, wasn't there, for being able to contact the department where you felt that there was an exceptional circumstance where you couldn't make something work. So that might actually be, maybe Simon could share the email that they have, but maybe, that could be something where they say, look, we actually can't make this work. We do need, an extra teacher or whatever it is.
Yeah. Or maybe make it a full-time post, so you just have one teacher in one and one in the other.
Yes, yeah. Moving
Moving
between the two.
Yeah, in and out. It is a tricky one. It is a tricky one. We have a couple more questions. And again, if you have questions or comments, you know how to add them. We love getting these questions. These are really challenging us, aren't they, Claire? Lorraine O'Connell has a very long question. Okay. Can children move places so that pods change? I've been thinking about this a lot, and I think no. In infants, they need to move to a new group every 2 or 3 weeks. I would think no. Are they allowed to do this? Listen, Lorraine, you can do what you want. I'm not going to come after you. Are they allowed? I don't know. And again, it's up to your principal of school. I'm only joking, by the way. Sitting beside the same person is not good for social skills, etc. What do you think? Now, I have been thinking about this, Claire, and I was thinking about this today, actually, because when they come into me, I generally let them sit where they want for the first few days, and they get very excited and they get chatting and they mess, and inevitably the same ones get moved into various spaces. So it takes you a week or two where you have them already. I think that most teachers will have kids in pods anyway. Would you think? And you might change them around once a term and so on. And then I was thinking, does the children's voice have to be part of this too? So if you're going to be in a pod for the same year, and if we were staff members, it's different for adults, but with kids like a bit of say of saying, could I at least have one of my friends in the pod? Do you know?
Yeah, it is.
Pick the other two. But then I'm also going to have to speak to last year's teacher, sees all these different things, and I suppose speak to her about which children would work well in different pods, because you might get 2 children the best of friends, but they just don't learn well together because they're all chatting. So that's what I'm going to be doing, speaking to the last year's teacher, asking, you know, who would you put in the same pod for the whole year? And I do think, yeah, they're going to be in it. They could be in it. They will be in it for the whole year, basically, won't they, Claire?
I don't know. I would have had a different reading of that now. Now, I would say the guidelines are fairly vague on it, and it's very much left up to your interpretation. At infant level, they're really like they're saying that social distancing doesn't have to be a part of it, which would mean that I think that they could be changing
Yeah,
places in that.
okay. Yeah.
I think most teachers in most schools will probably want to have pods even in infants to second, because I think everyone will just feel a bit safer with that. I think that it is very detrimental to the children to say, sorry, you're sitting with these three children for the whole year. They're the only children that you're allowed to play with on yard. They're the children you're going to have to be with for PE. Like, it is not good for children socially, in terms of their language development.
No.
It is just not good for children. I think we do them more harm than good by putting them kind of with the same kids and kind of limiting their friendships. And then, for the older classes, yes, you can ask the teacher last year who they worked well with and that, but you can't if you have junior infants. If you have junior infants, you
No.
don't know that yet.
No.
So there has to be a flexibility in moving them around. If I was doing it personally, I would probably be saying maybe a month, keeping them, and like you would have to keep a record of who was in their pod and
Yeah.
your classroom
Or
layout
would
and all
you
of that.
think that they could be in the same pods for the year, and outside they're obviously going to be able to interact with whoever they want because they're outside while keeping social distancing. So that maybe at break time and lunchtime they could mix then a little, or maybe once or twice a year.
It would be very hard though. I mean, with infants, trying to tell them, play together, but you're not allowed to touch each other. It's going to
Yeah.
be a really, really, really tricky
Oh,
one,
I wouldn't have
especially
outside. No, outside, I'd say they can just.
just do their thing. Yeah.
It's safer. You can advise that they stay back, but obviously they're not going to listen if they're four.
No. But we can't police this. It's not something that's policeable.
No.
We can just do our best with
Yeah,
the guidelines and try
you
our
have to
best.
be practical about it now. You could start really going crazy with the guidelines, but you have to be practical. Try and keep them in their pods where possible and keep them away as much as possible.
Yeah.
Um, okay, there is a name. I've Rara Quickly. I don't think that's her real name. Oh, that's Miss Piggy. Hi. Okay, Rara Quickly. Individual resources per child. What would you think of having a box per child, including things like pencils, crayons, rubber sharpener? I think that's a great idea. What do you think? They usually come in with pencil cases, don't they, Claro?
Yeah, I think that's a super idea. I mean, I know that I would have in previous years had, just shared kind of tub in the middle of the table, and they all throw their pencil cases in there and whatever. Like, that is not really going to be something that is doable going
No.
forward. So I think, yeah, having each child with their box where they keep their belongings. I would even go so far as to say, that they had their own little, scissors, even a
Yeah.
paintbrush. I know they said to do drawing for the first term, but even if they had their own little paintbrush and like
I think
the dry paint.
it
Say
said
that.
that, Claire, in one of the other documents. It said that each child should have their own paintbrush.
Oh, very good.
Yeah,
Okay.
it's one of the other
Okay.
ones where it started talking about covering library books, and there's lots of practical ideas there, but that they
Yeah.
could have a paintbrush, a Pritt stick, a scissors,
Yeah.
a pen. But
Yeah.
I think most parents would be sensible enough to have them in the pencil case anyway from the book list. So,
Yeah,
um,
absolutely. And I mean, like, I would have always kept the children's books in drawers away from their desks, had as little as possible on the kids' desks. But
yeah,
now I guess you don't want children to be touching each other's books and congregating at drawers or whatever. So, I mean, having like a plastic box on the desk or on the floor next to them where they have just all their own materials,
yeah.
it seems to be a very good way to manage it.
Yeah. I think the baskets, I saw who was doing that. It was a teacher in our school where had the big baskets on the table this year, and all of the children's stuff was in that. So at the end of the day, she was able to take the baskets off and quickly spray down. And I was
Okay.
intending to do that this year anyway. So I'd say that's something that can be used for classes in terms of equipment and changing the class around. That each child could have their own little, a good solid, good quality basket, and
Yeah.
everything goes in there, their books, their pencils,
Yeah.
everything. I think that would be very sensible. Rona Caffrey, okay, yeah, this is another thing. Will it be allowed? Ah, yeah, there's been, and this wasn't mentioned really specifically, and it's kind of was like, oh, let's just ignore that
Yeah.
elephant in the room, and anyway, let's just brush over it, and that's wrong. The NCSE should be coming out with something on this at least. But maybe, Claire, in the meantime, what do you think?
Yeah, that was totally ignored. There was nothing about that. And I mean, the tragedy of it is that we have children who are really, really able for a lot of mainstream, and it is going to be so detrimental to them if they're not allowed to integrate for the things that they should, that they're well able to do. I think it's something that, again, schools are going to have to just make a decision on themselves. Like, if you do have a child who is quite high functioning and they end up in mainstream all day long, where are they going to get their SNA access from? Where are they going to get their kind of support teaching from? They usually would be getting it from the special class teacher. So it's something that was totally brushed over. There was no mention of it that I saw at all. And I think it's something schools are going to have to decide. But I do know that there are a lot of children that is going to affect very badly if the school makes a decision that the children aren't going to be allowed to integrate. Maybe it's a case that they'll be allowed to integrate for things like, that they'd be on a shared
Or
yard
PE,
break.
or maybe when you do outdoor activity. That's what I was kind of thinking. PE, yard break. If you did reading outside as much as possible. It's just, and I wonder then, would children with severe need, would they understand the concept of the pods and the bubbles within the class? And
Yeah.
it is going to be disconcerting for those children and for the parents as well, because
Yeah.
it's been
Or
hard
if
for months.
the child comes up to integrate, will they be allowed to come with an SNA?
Yes,
Or is
yes.
it a case? Is it a case that they come for the whole day and they have no SNA?
Yeah, I know that is a tricky one, and I don't know how. I would say it's down to every individual school, but I'm hoping that there will be clarification from the department, the NCSC. I know Norma Foley, our Minister for Education, is on Twitter. I suggest people direct message her, send her a message, send her an email, and I'll do it myself, just to let her know that she kind of forgot a few things, and could she? I know she's flat out busy though, so yeah. But yeah, they have forgotten that. Rara, quickly again. ReLWR. Does this role need to be filled prior to DESH camp in August? What's the LWR?
The teacher who has to take the role of coordinating everything to do
For
with
free.
for free. What is it called? A lead worker representative.
All right. I think you have your eye
Yeah.
on that, Claire.
Yeah, I do not. I do not. No,
Yes. So I was particularly not, well, no, both of us were kind of ranting about this today. So do we want to speak about this? Does this need to be filled? It doesn't say it needs to be filled before a particular time. It has to be, what was the word they used? That the Board of Management will appoint, apparently, and by a show of hands from the staff. So I presume we all have to be sitting around the table and put our hands up of who we think the best teacher for this job will be. It's the one thing I'm most unhappy with, Claire, and I don't want to turn this into a rant. Why did you ask this question, Rara, quickly? She just knows how to get me going. But yeah, it's the one thing that I think that I just think we missed an opportunity there for it to be a new post of responsibility. It looks to me, looking at the role, as if it's nearly a full-time job. It's a very responsible position. It's a serious position if you look at the role. This may not even be for a year, Claire. This could be indefinitely. We don't know how long this is hanging around for. And I do think, again, that would be no harm sending a quick email or message to Norma. Norma's going to be getting all these emails tonight now saying, Ross said, send an email complaining about this. But yeah, I know that's not answering your question. I don't think it has to be filled before the summer. It doesn't actually say, it's quite vague about that.
I would imagine that a lot of schools will find it hard to fill that role because it's unpaid, it's a huge amount of responsibility, and you have to do it voluntarily. Maybe there'll be a turnaround. Maybe if schools are giving feedback to the department that they haven't been able to fill it, they'll say, okay, we'll restore a post responsibility, to do it. Yeah. What probably will end up happening is that schools who still do have post holders left, one of them will have to take it on as being their post, which is terrible because it means the school is actually in effect going to lose one of their post holders to this role. So
it's not great. Come here, we are going to be coming up to nearly an hour, Claire. We've been chatting for 50 minutes. And if anyone has any last questions to send, okay, Anya Murphy, do the guidelines say specifically how many children are allowed in a pod? It doesn't, no. Does it, Simon? Oh, Simon is holding up 6 to me. Where did you get that information from, Simon? not the guidelines. Okay, he got it from some.
Okay. The guidelines said keep the numbers small, and from what I took, it was somewhere between 4 and 6.
Yeah, if
Um,
Simon wants to type up where he got that information, maybe share the link,
yeah.
where it says how many children specifically. He seems to think 6. So yeah, we shall wait for that answer.
It
Do we have
depends on
any?
class sizes, really, because I mean, if you have a very large class, you can't have tables of 4 with a meter between them. You just won't fit all the kids in, so you're going to have to do tables of
Yeah,
6.
I think so. Yeah, and I think it depends on the size of the class. It's hard to know that one. Are there any other questions? Yes, there is. Okay, Rara, quickly again. Okay, reveal yourself, Rara, quickly. Self-isolate. Is this one of our friends from school? Is it you, Claire? Are you? I'm only joking.
I am.
Self-isolation. Oh yeah, after suspected case. So I presume this is if a teacher has to go into self-isolation. Will this impact sick leave? Now there was a circular before lockdown, wasn't there, on this? I
Yeah.
don't think it does affect sick leave. Does it? A special COVID-19? If it's passed
Yeah,
by a GP, I'm nearly
my
sure. But
memory of it was that it won't affect,
yeah,
that it's special COVID related, so it
yeah,
won't affect your sick leave.
yeah.
Hopefully.
No, I think you're right. No, I think you're right. And again, a GP has to declare it. You can't just come in and say, "Hi, principal, I'm self-isolating." It has to
Yeah.
be official from a GP, as far as that's what it says in the circular. Okay, do we have any other hand questions? Oh, hand sanitizer as a substitute for hand washing. And I kind of know the answer to this. What do you think? Apparently, it's a no. Your hands have to be clean for hand sanitizer to work. So you have to I think hand washing, from what um, I'm not qualified in the area of it, but from what you're just listening to news and reading articles, that hand washing is the most effective thing you can do for 20 seconds washing properly. And then hand sanitizer in cases where you can't wash your hands, you could use it. But I would think hand washing and hand sanitizer when they're coming in the morning. Obviously, there's no sink,
Yeah.
Claire, so they're going to have to hand sanitize. But they actually have reference to this in one of the documents too, when they have to wash their hands.
Yeah.
So it's coming in the morning, before and after break, when they go to the toilet, when they leave the room. There's lots of times during the day they have to. What do you think, Claire? Would you prefer them to wash hands and sanitize?
Oh golly, there's going to be a lot of school time dedicated to hand washing, I think, especially when, like with infants, you're training them. You'd almost need to take them in one by one and actually, teach them. I'd
My
say
son knows how to wash his hands properly, Claire.
well, from my previous experience as an infant teacher,
I think
sometimes
now, I think now
but no,
everyone is going to know, Claire, and they all know about it.
it probably has, but I guess it's just supervising it to kind of make sure that they know that, just because you do it at home, you do it in school and whatever. But yeah, look, it's something that's going to take a lot of time. I think you have to follow the guidelines. See when they say to wash the hands, or when you wash the hands, and then when they say sanitizer is sufficient to use the sanitizer. I'm sure it'll be in the posters that we are going to get provided to us.
I know, very soon, coming soon. I know, yeah, and you're right, Claire. We should take our leadership from NFET. So if NFET say wash your hands and sanitize, you do just that. Don't be listening to me, who doesn't really have a clue about any of this. I'm not a medical professional, healthcare worker. Okay, so yeah, the NFET guidelines, whatever they say, and there is specific on that return to work. Whatever they say, I would follow it. Sinead McGregor Holmes, any suggestions on what to do with junior infants on the first morning, especially as the parents won't be able to come into the classroom? I used to take them whatever toys they wanted to distract them from their sorrow. Is that a last question? That's a sad one to leave it on. We'll have to end with a happy one. What do you think, Claire? Oh,
Yeah, I know. I mean, it's going to be so hard for junior infants coming in. It's really just like it's hard enough at the best of times with the separation anxiety and that, but then coming into this environment where things are completely different, and the parents aren't allowed in, and that, like, I would say you're probably looking at doing kind of coloring worksheets and things like that they can have at their desks and that they don't have to share. And with the toys, it's probably it's even a tricky one, because if you put, say, blocks on one table and another thing on another table, you might have one child crying that they wanted to go here or there. Golly, it's a really tricky one. Probably a selection of toys on a table, but those toys would need to stay with that table for for the week probably, or it's a really, really tricky one.
It's tricky, and I think I suppose just thinking about my own child again and his teacher, he's in junior infants, he finished this year, and she is going to do very kindly some Zoom calls at the end of August. She said just to get them back in school and seeing the teacher. So I do think there's things that schools can do in terms of it's not just the junior infants show up at 9 o'clock on a Monday. Now, maybe some schools would do that, but wouldn't it be nice if the new teacher could actually arrange a Zoom call the week before, or maybe a little, I was seeing an idea for a virtual school tour where you bring them around the school
Yeah.
and show them, or even an open day, maybe outside in the yard, just before the whole madness starts, at the junior infants and the parents get a chance,
I
socially
mean,
distant.
I did see there is some provision for that in the guidelines. I mean, it does talk about kind of communicating with parents, and there was a kind of a thing about having like a mini open day. And I saw one school today are doing like the day before school officially opens. The children are coming in, like the new junior infants are coming in for like they have a time slot, say maybe 15 minutes. That it's only like a group of 5 though are coming in at their time slot to have a look around. Then after that time slot is over and there's time to kind of clean in between, another group are coming in, so that that they are getting to come in and kind of see it before school starts.
That's a really nice idea, actually, isn't it?
It is nice,
But I
yeah.
think we can, like they have said, September is not business as usual. So I would think that principals and schools can be flexible and make it child-centered. We don't have to get them all in. I would think on the first day we can do it in a different way. So you could take them in little groups for 20 minutes at a time outside, do something different. So it's not this overwhelming first day for them, and the parents can't even go in. Like it's not going to be nice.
Yeah.
Catherine Whelan, yeah. What about the singing issue? Can we sing with infants? Again, in the curriculum, what did it say about this in the curriculum? It was
It doesn't
very
say.
vague.
Yeah, it doesn't say anything about singing. Like I know they say singing is more of a high risk activity. Imagine who would have thought I would ever say that. But they don't say anything about it in the guidelines.
Do you know what they do have though in these other documents I kept referring to? I think it's called the response to COVID. That other one. If Simon can put up the link, do you know the one I'm on about, where it's not the one. It's not the roadmap. It's the other one. Is it something COVID-19 response to COVID-19? I'll get the correct link, but it has kind of like a section on library, on art. It has a section on music, and it says percussion, wind instruments are basically not allowed. Not the curriculum one. It's not the curriculum one. No, it's not the curriculum one. I'll find it and I'll put it up. But I don't know if you've seen it. I'm not dreaming this. I definitely saw there's loads of little kind of things, strange things like that. That
Yeah.
wind instruments. If I can't sing with infants, I quit. Listen, I'm going to allow you, Dee. You can sing with infants. Just say Rozz said. You can do it. Go for it.
Look, I think really schools can do whatever they want within reason. Yes, do your best, follow the guidelines, but every school is completely different circumstances. We've been hearing questions that I hadn't thought of at all because, they're so far removed from our context. And I don't think anyone will be able to come in and say to a school, sorry, you're not doing that right. All we can do is do our best to follow these guidelines.
And it's about the children, and if we can't have music, we can't have drama, but
Yeah.
we'll do it within reason and we'll adapt it and we'll try to make it work the best we can. This is all we can do. We just have to be creative and flexible and think about the kids, I think. So yeah, what are your thoughts on face covering? Now, this is the poll that we put up on our Instagram page. It was a great idea from one of the teachers in my school said. So thanks to her, I won't name her. But what are your thoughts on face coverings for teachers? And we have a poll on that for Mash, actually. So Claire, what are your thoughts on face coverings for teachers?
So this is another really, really hard one where there's no kind of, it's a gray area. It's not something that's black or white, yes or no. Like ideally we would all be wearing face coverings because there is so much international evidence now to show that, universal masking is really effective. But at the same time, you can't expect small kids to wear face masks and to wear them correctly and consistently throughout the day. I mean, it is just not going to happen. It's something that is totally impractical, isn't going to work. And if teachers wear masks, it's not really going to offer the same protection. It has to be a case that everybody is wearing them for it to work. I mean, for me, it's kind of causing a lot of like when I think about the fact that the guidelines are you go into the supermarket, you wear a face mask, it's a much less risky scenario because you're going into a very large building for a very short period of time with adults who know how to wear masks, and are able to have impulse control in that. You're talking about classrooms, you're talking about, cramming a huge number of children into a space that, that doesn't have the same air circulation for such a long period of time, without masks and without proper social distancing. So for me, it's something that's really like, it's giving me a lot of kind of inner conflict because I'm like, oh God, we're not following the proper guidelines, but you just can't go back to school with full return to school and have the masks and the proper social distancing and that. So I guess my choice would be to not.
They put loads of money into extra teachers, and we could have, if they had a 5-year to 7-year plan on actually making class sizes smaller. Yes, we could.
Yeah.
And it may come to that. They may actually realize, okay, this is not working. But listen, we'll have to do our best in the meantime. And it's not, I wouldn't say there's any teacher who feels comfortable about it. Or any staff member, not just teachers, SNAs, any person
I
who's
think, Roz, I mean, this is what we started on. We started on talking about the class sizes being the biggest challenge. And I mean, it's kind of what we're coming back to again now. Maybe this is finally going to be the opportunity where we reduce class sizes. We've finally given the principals, the teaching principals, the admin day. We're finally funding cleaning in schools properly. Maybe this is going to be the time where primary education finally gets to shine and get resourced properly.
Yeah, wouldn't it be great? Wouldn't it be great, Claire? We're going to have to leave it on that very positive note. Thank you so much. It's been brilliant. I've really enjoyed the chat. And I hope it's been useful to everyone watching. And thank you so much to all those questions. And whoever that Miss Piggy person was, you can send. I'd love to see who you were. I'm really joking. No, the questions are great, really thoughtful, and kind of a lot of questions that we didn't even plan for as well, which was great. We could have spoken all night. We have a little poll. We'll do it in a minute. I just want to say top teaching resources, Claire. If you go on to Mash.ie, she has some brilliant resources. And I didn't say this, but she basically took the primary language curriculum and made it teacher friendly a couple of years ago, and that was not an easy task, but Claire did that. So well done, Claire. Your resources are brilliant, and I hope people get a chance to go check this out. You've got a brand new website as well. So listen, thank you to everyone for watching. It has been lovely, and we hope to do maybe another chat in the next while. So this is Roz and this is Claire Romito saying good night, and then we're going to show our little poll. If Simon has the image ready, he doesn't. Okay. We'll show the cut. So we won't show the poll, but the poll is on our Instagram page. We'll share it afterwards, can we, in the Facebook page. It was very close. It was, do you wish the government or the department had made face masks compulsory in the classroom? And I think it was 56% said yes, and obviously 44% said no. So it was very close as well. So listen, we're going to say goodbye. Simon's going to play a lovely, beautiful music video. He's told us not to talk during that time. So, and then we can have a chat after. Guys, thanks very much to everyone who tuned in. Really appreciate it, and all the questions and comments. And Claire, thank you so much for all your time.
Thanks, Roz. Thank you for organizing. You're great.
Okay. And best of luck to everyone in September. And we're all going to be brilliant. And it's fingers crossed, but plan. Yeah.